Alright, today we're going to be discussing a custom built Kreg clamp table. If you take a look at the picture there, that's the table that I built. That's it sitting there finished. I'm going to try to, as best I can, show you how I did it and why I did it, as opposed to just buying the stock Kreg clamp table. This is taking a look at the actual Kreg clamp table if you were to purchase it online. As you can see from the diagram I've got up here, its measurements are 33 3/4 by 21 3/4. Most I found were in about the $400 range. Mine, as you'll see later, is going to be 36 inches by 80 inches. And part of the reason why mine's going to be so big is it's also going to be an outfeed table for my table saw. Okay, so you're going to have to excuse my crude CAD drawings, but this is what I built. This is my Kreg table, 36 inches by 80 inches, like I mentioned before. You can see the blue areas there on top. That's where I put my extruded aluminum Kreg track. I mounted quite a bit in there because I wanted to be able to clamp things down in a bunch of different configurations. The table surface itself is 2 layers of 3/4 inch MDF, and then on top of that I had another 1.5 inch MDF and 1/4 inch PVC. Some people call it ABS sheeting. I really like that ABS sheeting because it provides a really slick, smooth surface for a table saw outfeed, and if you were to squeeze glue out onto that, you can wipe it up real easy. You have to put 3/4 inch material on top of your table to recess that Kreg track into. So that's why I've got the other 1/2 inch MDF and 1/4 inch PVC. My frame, I made it out of 3 by 2 inch steel tube, thin wall. The only reason why I selected 3 by 2 is because it fit the casters that I was going to weld onto the bottom. You can make your framework out of metal, you can make it out of wood, you can make your table any size you want. You can make it out of a single layer of 3/4 inch MDF, which is close to what the actual Kreg table is. However, I did read a number of reviews that said that if you clamp with any kind of force, that it will actually raise the table up a little. So I wanted to avoid that. That's why I went with 2 layers, 3/4 inch MDF. This is a picture of the Kreg clamp track itself. You can get these in varying lengths. That little T slot going down the middle there, that's what the Kreg clamps ride in, and I'll show you a picture of those in a moment and explain kind of how they work. You can get these at Kreg themselves, or you can go online and hunt around. You might find some pretty good deals with the track and the clamps included. I'd do some hunting, figure out how much track you want to embed in the surface of your table, and search around for the best deal. This is the actual clamp. That's a 3 inch clamp, and like I said, that slides along that T slot in the Kreg clamp. You can get a 6 inch clamp as well. The nice thing about these clamps is you can tighten them down kind of like you do vice grips, and then no matter how thick your material is, it will clamp down with that same force. Alright, continuing on with my beautiful drawings. This is just a picture of the 2 layers of MDF starting off sitting on a pair of sawhorses. So the first thing I'd recommend you do is cut your MDF to size, stack it on top of each other, and then secure them to each other. Wherever you end up putting your screws to secure them together, just make sure they're not going to get in the way of where you're going to eventually embed your track. Something else I'd recommend doing is leveling that wood out as best you can, leveling the bottom level and the top level as best you can. And then also you're going to need to drill through the top, wherever you're going to put your screws, drill through that top piece with a hole large enough so the wood screw just slides through that hole, and then let it grab into the second one. That will suck all that gap out of there, because there'll be some gap out in there between those 2 levels of MDF. If you don't do that and you just wood screw through the whole thing, whatever gaps there will remain there, and whatever unevenness or bows to the wood, that'll stay there as well. would secure together. Then you can start laying your track out, figure out where you want to put it, and then you can figure out where you need to put your bolt holes to secure that track. I'll talk for a moment about securing the track to your table. If you look at this picture, you'll notice the two T-slots that face the bottom of the track. 1/4-inch bolts fit perfectly into that. So if you use 1/4-inch bolts, slide them down those slots there, stick them through the holes in the table, you'll be able to secure that track up just fine. I would drill a slightly larger hole than 1/4-inch for my bolts, give them just a little bit of play, make it a lot easier to slide your track over those bolts. To make it a little easier to get your track on there, drill your holes, put your bolts through, secure the bolts just a little bit with a nut so they won't pull all the way out, and then you can lift each bolt individually and slide the track over it. That'd be way easier than putting all your bolts into that track than trying to get the bolts to drop down through the holes and getting all the bolts to line up all at once. Okay, hope that makes sense to you. Like I said, 1/4-inch bolts work great. Just make sure you get the right length so that you can secure it properly without having a bunch of bolt hanging out of the bottom. Here you can see some of the locking nuts that I use to secure that track down to my table. Now we've got the table flipped upside down, and you'll notice that I have some 1/2-inch MDF that I've secured over some of those nuts coming through, and I'll explain why. I'm going to use a metal frame, as you saw, and if I were to rest that metal frame on top of the bottom there, obviously those nuts would get in the way of that frame sitting flush up against the wood. So I had a choice. I could buy a shorter bolt and recess it into that 1.5 inches of MDF material, which I didn't want to do because I want the full strength of that material. So what I did to compromise is I just put another section of 1/2 inch over where the frame's going to sit, and then recess the nuts into that. So that'll allow my frame to sit flat on the table, as you can see. Just something I did so that I could keep the strength of the full material. Here you can see that I've got some of my legs welded on now, and as you look closer you can see that I've also got my casters. I just got those at Harbor Freight. I welded those on. Something I wanted to be able to do with this table is level it out and lift it above those casters so that it would sit still for being an outfeed table. If you look at that leg, you can see that little box there that's welded on. That's what I welded one of those on each of the 6 legs to level the table out. They work. I could go into detail about what those are, but they don't really work that well, so I think you should come up with your own system for leveling your table out. You just want to make sure that you get the height of those legs proper so that when you retract those levelers, that it rests on the caster, you can move the table around. Another thing to keep in mind, if you're going to put casters on your table, put 2 swivels and 2 non-swivels. It makes that beast of a table much easier to rotate around. Here you can see that I've got both my layers of 1.5 inch MDF. I have my 1/2 inch of MDF, and I have my tracks secured, embedded within that 1/2 inch. And then I took some black edge banding and edge banded those layers together. I'm also, just so you're aware, I also secured the 1/2 inch to the other 1.5 inch of MDF. Now all that's left is to put on the 1/4 inch ABS sheeting or PVS sheeting, whatever you want to call it, and then she'll just about be ready to go. Alright, so here we are with the PVC on top. If you take a close look at some of this video, you know that I've got a wider gap in my PVC than the track needs, and you'll see that also in the 1/2 inch MDF below that PVC. And the reason for that is so that those clamps can rotate around in a 360 degrees. And there's also these little blocks, you'll see video of it in a moment, that you can attach to that track as well that assists with screwing face frame together and holding it at a 90. So you need some gap there for those clamps and for those blocks. All right, there it is, finished and up against the table saw. Make for a good outfeed table, I think. Plenty long enough, plenty wide enough. I'm pretty sure I have enough track embedded in that table so that I can clamp stuff in just about any configuration I want. These little blocks here are what can fit into the track, and that's why that gap's there, so the blocks will fit. And you place those along both tracks, and that's what you use to push your face frame up against it, like it shows in the picture there. And then your face frame stays nice and square. So what you want to make sure that you do when you attach your clamp tracks to the table, make sure that they're square to each other so that those blocks will hold stuff square as well. Okay, so here's my face frame clamped in. You can see I put a couple extra tracks in my table too, so I can clamp stuff in just about any configuration I want. But when you slide the wood up against these blocks, all the way down, you can see the blocks, then clamp it down, that's pretty square. I mean, there's no gap there, so works good. All right, well, I can say that I've had quite a bit of miles on this table. I've used it for face frame buildup. I've used it to build just about everything. It's a great little work table, and as far as a outfeed table for the table saw, that PVC couldn't work better. The nice thing about the PVC is as your workpiece comes off the table saw, it just slides right along that PVC, and the PVC doesn't push it in any direction. It just follows along nicely. Any glue that gets out onto the surface of that table is no problem at all. As far as cost of this table, it was probably at least double what a normal Kreg clamp table would cost you, meaning that it's $800, might have been as high as $1,000. So it's not a cheap table, but it serves a fantastic purpose for me and well worth the money, I think. I think I'm going to get a lot of good years of use out of this table. As far as the levelers, I would recommend that you make your own levelers. Don't try using the, well, you won't be able to use the levelers that I use because you don't know what they were. However, make your own levelers, weldable levelers on the bottom there. You can get some threaded hex, weld that onto the bottom of those legs, then get bolt heads. They sell flat bolt heads that you can screw up into that threaded hex, and those make great levelers right there. All right, hope this video maybe inspires some of you to build your own. If you have any questions, post them on here and I'll answer them. All right, thanks for watching.